let me take you over here
Certainly as a
because
character.
the next story we got to cover is the UNRWA story. And if you were to go to my Twitter handle and you search for UNRWA right here like this, you can go back in the timeline. You can see what's been going on. So taking away the support system, 30,000 people who work at the UN to feed Palestinians. So taking away UNRWA was based on a prison inmate's mom's word at beginning. And then you could start to go through and follow as it
Wow, are you
built up death by
serious? It
starvation.
began with a wow. So this is The Wire. This is the
Yeah.
fifth season of The Wire. McNulty makes up a murder. Like this is literally this is
Yeah.
wow, man. That's so crazy. And then that literally becomes the main like it's an egregore. It's a manifested like thought form from a collective group. It's sort of a mystical concept, but the idea we give life to concepts by our participation in them collectively, and then the truth is almost impossible to find out because it actually has a life of its own, kind of like a corporate person. Wink, wink.
So by February 20th, they're, slowly starving people because they're calling UNRWA terrorists. And then they go about trying to prove it. Oh, here's some pictures, right? UNRWA is a Hamas front. 30,000 people had like less than a dozen do something, and they're all of a sudden a Hamas front, right?
God, that looks like
So that makes the
9/11 all
bombing
over
of the
again.
school okay, right? Right. So this justification by the propaganda minister that makes the bombing of the school that day. They bombed an UNRWA school, but it's okay because they're terrorists, Tony. And then Elon Levy, he keeps saying, why does UNRWA have activities in the West Bank, right? It's because you won't feed the citizens. But if you go up here, you can start to see where is the evidence that Hamas is hijacking aid, and they've got he's reposting. What is that? UNRWA. Like he's reposting them, the terrorists, as the evidence. And then if you go up by March 5th, babies are dying of malnutrition and dehydration. But it's okay. Just believe that UNRWA are terrorists, and you can go back to your, daily supporting genocide. And then the last one here, I guess whatever was going on here was deleted. It was not right for Twitter. This is a considered agenda acceptable agenda because Israel accused a dozen UNRWA workers out of 30,000 of having had connections. Now, this past week, this whole story has fallen apart. The proof of this that they offered was like instantly debunked, and they don't really want people finding out about it, which is why I think this week's time capsule needs to have a little something on this story because the denial of an aid agency as large as the United Nations agency for Gaza is unprecedented. And if they were already at the ICJ, then to do this is just like total disrespect for the rules of conduct in these situations,
But
I
that's the
guess is
point.
the way you would
That's
say
sort
it.
of the point because what it shows is that there's all these international bodies and appeals to jurisdiction as far as international law and all these sorts of things, but it really comes down to the science of leverage. It always will come down to the science of leverage until someone, and when we get to the Muslim skeptic later on about why other Islamic majority nations don't help support Palestine, you'll find out why. It's because it comes down to who has literally power, quite literally. And so it unfortunately does oftentimes boil down to that.
Almost like one nation under blackmail
You quite literally. Yep, you got it.
type of power.
Exactly. You got it. Right.
And we'll learn maybe about the new Epstein later. All right, let's go to this clip about what the official claims are and then what the actual evidence is.
October 7th, 150 days ago. We have a duty to expose the truth about those who took part in this brutal massacre. Today, we are declassifying a call that we intercepted made by Youssef Zidan Suleiman Khawajra, a Hamas terrorist who took part in the massacre of October 7th. But he is not just a Hamas terrorist. He is also an UNRWA employee working as a teacher in a UN elementary school in Gaza. The terrorist is heard speaking on the phone roughly 7 hours after Hamas began invading Israel, murdering, mutilating, massacring, kidnapping, raping, and burning entire families alive. On the call, you can hear him bragging about Sabaya.
Pause it, please.
Sabaya is a female captain.
Okay. He just said a bunch of things in a continuous phrasing, which generally makes it a declarative sentence, which if you took that one sentence and you analyzed it for what is the evidence of these claims, I have yet to see it. And I've been looking at these types of assertions and claims.
Well, the evidence all
for
comes
quite
from
some time.
them.
In fact, yeah.
Yeah.
Or not. The claims all come from them, but the evidence doesn't
Oh,
all
right.
come
Yeah,
from
yeah,
them,
yeah. Right. That's what I
because
mean. Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
of-
Exactly. Yeah. Fabricated or otherwise. Yeah. That's all. We can't assess the evidence for ourselves because they're the ones like a good priest, you know, you can't see behind the veil, I guess, or behind the supplications. So
Yeah. And now that you guys have heard that much of it, I've decided we're just going to scrub past the rest of this, and I'll just tell you what happens. The one guy on the phone is allegedly a Hamas guy, and he kidnapped a woman, and he openly says so. The guy he's talking to acquired like a royal horse or a royal bloodline horse, which is allegedly another human hostage.
wait,
Not
they
actually
say
a
that
horse.
stuff?
These are
That's
the
crazy.
assertions.
Wow.
That's what he says in the call. Let's go ahead and roll the call then. Yeah, because I've heard other clips like this that they've offered, and then I've seen other people like analyze these clips, and they don't always seem to be what they're purported to be. But
Sure.
this is a good study and has bara. Let's listen to the claims, and then we'll see what we think. You know, we don't, just because we listen doesn't mean we have to believe it. So let's check out the IDF spokesman general, who might also be retiring soon. A lot of them are.
About Sabaya.
It's hard work.
Sabaya is a female captive that he got on his hands. He's talking about one of our girls. He's talking about one of our women. The term Sabaya, used by this UNRWA worker, is an Arabic term meaning female captive, who is a possession of a captor. Sabaya is exactly the same word used by ISIS to describe the Yazidi women they captured and did horrific things to. I want you to listen to the conversation. I want you to hear the tone, how they brag, how they laugh, how they talk about women, how they call her a noble horse. Listen.
ابو حسن خالد معك، كيف حالك؟ سلامات. وين ايش اخبار؟ وين انت؟ وين السبايا والدنيا ودين عنا خليش نايم. انت بالشارع، نام في الدار شارع. اسكت، احنا عند السبايا، عندنا مسك واحده. اسكت. وين ايش اخبارك؟ والله حبيبي. وين انت؟ والله روحنا. اسكت. ايش كيف امورك؟ والله كويس. اسكت والله نار. لقيت شيء؟ ايه؟ لقيت شيء؟ جبنا فرس يا حاج. ايش جبت؟ خيل فرس. جاب حصان؟ صار اصلا اصيل، مش حصان كديش تبع القرعان. انت مين جبته؟ مين ساعده؟ عبد الله ساعده؟ ايه كيف امور؟ بمزح يا راجل، كيف حالك؟ والله حسينا جوا. لا يا راجل والله باقي حد، والله مبلجين بجمعتنا. لا شفت مناظر؟ شفت طق طلوع العينين طخينهم. كم واحد شفت؟ انا شفت اثنين. والله شاب من عندنا من جامعتنا. طيب كان صاحبتهم يا حبيبي.
I'm a father of two girls. When I hear this conversation, I tremble. It's horrific. 150 days ago, on October 7th, Hamas terrorists abducted and violated young women, young girls. From the testimonies of hostages who have returned
All right, pause for
from
a second.
captivity.
Yeah, this is absurd. I see what they're doing now. Yeah, so just the continual appeal to emotion
Well,
based on straw men and yeah.
If you're interested, I want you to listen to the whole clip. But
Mhm.
right there, where, like, first off, he's already on a dramatically lit set. where it's
Right.
artificially dark in the background and he's in the spotlight. Very different than like how a president or prime minister might speak to you, right? That has been a set theme for his delivery of his Hasbara the whole time. At the part where he's like, they took, they're talking about our women. Let me ask you a question. When you removed these people from their houses, you did so really politely, right? You didn't show up in the middle and like, Nakba Nakba, who's there, right? So like it seems disingenuous and one-sided for him to like play it on the emotional angle, and the hostages are one thing. The claims right after that. So on both sides, there's hostages already, right? On the other side, he mentions the systematic weaponization of sexual abuse. That is also lacking evidence. It's the next story coming up
Right.
from a
Yeah.
number of angles and has been
Yeah.
thoroughly debunked at this point
Right.
in history. But probably the Hasbara has a lot of momentum out there
But
and
you
will
have
continue to
to,
infect people with inaccurate versions for a long time.
yeah, you have to start the Hasbara before it's been debunked. And in the case, as Max Blumenthal pointed out, they're going to basically scapegoat or sacrifice, well, scapegoat is the wrong word, sacrifice the one author associated with that paper in the New York Times, for they're not taking the story down, which tells me that they're, you know, even though they know it's falsified, they're going to just prop up and sacrifice the author rather than the story that they're leaving up. Unless that's changed recently. I think that's what I heard last week. It shows you they're willing to just keep the propaganda going, because people who aren't willing to do the extra research and don't care, they see that headline, instantly automatic assumptions, heuristics, so forth and so on.
And even if you were trying to search it right now, all that comes up are the debunked stories. It's very hard to find the research that we've presented sequentially over these episodes. But the easy way to find it in the future is it's in the show notes for these episodes, because they don't want you to find it through internet searches. You have to know what Aaron Mate wrote and what Max Blumenthal wrote and what The Intercept copied of their work and turned in as their own, and all these fun things that happen along the way. And that's part of like, we do the show once a week, but I leave the trail of breadcrumbs on my Twitter almost every day about what's going on. So like the minutia, the details in between the details, they're usually found here. We're going to talk about this use of argumentum ad nauseum that
Oh
Elon
yeah.
Levy came up with,
I
because
actually, argumentum ad nauseum
this
is
is a
one I
good
actually
one.
did present in my logic or fallacies course, my logic course.
But
It
you
is a
see how he
legit,
changed it to nauseon
I
for the
see,
UN,
law.
right?
Yeah.
It's a logical fallacy of quoting a UN
So
agency as definitive
he,
proof.
he
But he
just
does this
committed
all the
the
time.
fallacy of
He uses
amphiboly
the
there.
UN as proof. I know. That's
That's
why he's so
hilarious.
funny, dude, because like
Yeah,
he
he's
writes
great.
this and then he contradicts himself, and then I tweet it and no one sees it. Look, two likes on that. I took down the propaganda meister. I got 2 likes.
He's
That's
one of
cool.
those clever, who he tries to
Wow.
position himself being that clever, witty, sort of hipster style, young generation appeal. So let's, be kind of trollish. They're sort of
Generation
like
Z.
in a trolling way. It appeals to the younger generations, that sort of thing. I mean, he's well spoken. The way sad, I mean, he's wrong about everything he speaks about seemingly, but he plays the aesthetic card very well to appeal to a very specific demographic. So it's very strategically has borrowed.
He has borrowed a lot of stuff from Anat Schwartz. I'm not writing for them anymore. And she shouldn't be scapegoated. She's not the problem. She's not the problem. She's a symptom of the root cause. Let's go back to closer to the root cause than he would like to be, Daniel Hagari.
We know that the women and girls in Hamas captivity are in danger. They are in danger. Our mission to rescue our hostages from the hands of these ruthless terrorists is urgent. It's urgent. Hamas and ISIS follow the same sick ideology and employ the same barbaric methods. Youssef Zidan el-Hajjawra was just one out of several UN workers who took part in the Hamas massacre of October 7th. This evening, we are publishing the names of additional terrorists employed by UNRWA who participated in October 7th massacre. Bakr Mahmoud Abdallah Darwish, a Hamas terrorist and a school counselor at a UN, at an UNRWA school. Hassan al-Ja'abari, a Hamas terrorist who works in the Hamas-run Ministry of Health. Mamdouk Hossein Ahmed al-Kouk, a Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist and a teacher at the UNRWA elementary school. Over 450 UNRWA employees are military operatives in terror groups in Gaza. Over 450. This is no mere coincidence. This is systematic. There is no claiming we did not know. Hamas exploits humanitarian organizations and uses them to commit crimes against humanity. These terrorists are employed by UNRWA. They receive salaries that are paid by the international community. Donations that are meant for humanitarian purposes, meant to benefit the people of Gaza, are funding mass murderers and rapists. We send the information that I'm sharing now, as well as further intelligence, to our international partners, including the UN. The weaponization of sexual violence is a global problem. Hamas's weaponization of rape and sexual violence should be met with global outrage. It demands a global response. Hamas is holding 134 Israelis hostages, including our women, our girls. Bringing all our hostages home isn't just a mission. It's a moral obligation.
What was the number of people that he cited? It's around 200, right? Somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
So 1/10 as many that they hold. Seems a
And it
little
should be
hypocritical,
mentioned.
bro.
Yeah, and it should be mentioned that what evidence has there been to show that Israel really cares about retrieving their own hostages? I mean, there's a lot of calls in Israel from those who are, have imprisoned or family members or friends that are hostages right now of Hamas that, have been critical of the IDF, seemingly more focused on this total destruction rather than, rescuing their own citizens. I mean, that's been an
Well, the
accusation of
Hannibal
her.
Directive on 10/7, the indiscriminate firing of Hellfire missiles. These are not precise weapons. And when fired into crowds
That's right.
of, if you hold a music festival near the border and that border gets breached and those helicopter crews come over, all they see is a bunch of people near the breached fence and they open fire. And this
That's
is IDF, this is Haaretz, this is Times of Israel, this is Electronic Intifada, this is any number, Gray Zone, any number of places have published reputable journalism about these topics. So it's not a conspiracy theory. It's because we can read and we are comprehensive, we are comprehending that which we are literate of. So it's not just literacy, it's also understanding what you read in the context, right? Now I have a tweet here from Elon Levy because let's see, it's not this one. Well, I might as well show this one because this was news today too, and we're going to get into this story soon enough. But to make the Hasbara go down, we need to read this tweet from Michael Tracy. He said, "Finally, God's chosen people are safe in the mean streets of South Dakota," and it's about the new bill ensuring the security of God's chosen people that Kristi Noem thoughtfully is putting through. Again, during the pandemic, very outspoken leader of freedom. And during this time, very much just saying what she thinks will placate her audience, that she doesn't understand what she's really saying or doing or calling for in regards to First Amendment. As a for instance, like people already have the right to practice religion freely. And if we don't have the right to speak freely about each other's religions, for instance, Jerusalem that Bill Maher brought up, it could be also the home of Christianity, with Christianity's most holy Church of the Holy Sepulchre there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just Islam and Judaism, it could be Christianity. should it be a Christian ethno state over there? Because, you know, Christians could just as easily go all the way back to the time of their Messiah, Jesus, the Christ, and they changed like a whole calendar around for that guy, right? Even though
They
Israel
did.
does have a different date system. They're in the year like 5700 or something, but
Hmm.
you know, these things going on. So anyway, we can get into the details of the Chosen People Protection Act, or whatever they phrase it, because it is very similar to other acts being implemented in other states and countries at this critical time of not being able to criticize Zionism.